Our first movie tells the story of a man who tries to conduct a love affair under the slight handicap that he is completely invisible.
Memoirs of an Invisible Man was released in 1992 and is one of the biggest oddities in Chevy Chase's film career.
What we're doing is we're shooting a movie called Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I've been working on this project for 5 years, and it's great. I play a guy named Nick, and he basically falls for a girl who's played by Daryl Hannah, and then he gets caught in a freak accident and he turns, you guessed it, invisible.
Though not credited, Chevy Chase was a producer on this project, using his birth name, Cornelius. And as he said, he was developing the project for years, originally with Ivan Reitman set to direct, as he was hot from the success of Ghostbusters.
So if you go like that, and then everybody sees it, but if you just a little thumb thing. But now you've got this, right? All right, here we go. That's gorgeous. That's a nice bit.
This was not going to be a retread of the Claude Rains film. Instead, this was based on the one and only book of the author H.F. Saint, and to adapt it, they hired Oscar-winning screenwriter William Goldman.
I've only written movies I want to write. In other words, when I got offered a special effects movie, I know I couldn't do it.
Goldman wrote a very simple fish-out-of-water comedy about a transparent man, but Chevy Chase kept demanding rewrites, requesting the writer explored the loneliness of invisibility. The production was pulling in two directions. The studio wanting a silly knockabout comedy and Chase wanting something a little bit more grown up. In Goldman's book, Which Lie Did I Tell?, he recounts the difficulty of writing this film, being given notes, applying them to the script, and the production still not being happy. I have had this problem myself, not on a writing project, but on an illustration one. I was drawing a poster for a company and two people were giving me notes. The problem was they were both talking to me and not each other. So one person would get me to add something, only for the other to ask me to remove it. I was stuck in this sort of one step forward, one step back situation. Until I threw my toys out the pram and said, if you can't make up your minds, I'm not doing this. And like William Goldman, I left the project.
This is the scene where Nick Holloway goes to sleep. He's got a little bit of a hangover. He takes a quick cat nap in the Magnascopics building, and an explosion, a flash of light occurs, rendering him and much of the building invisible. And that's what we're shooting now, is the whiteout effect of the flash of the light.
The script was rewritten by Robert Collector and Dana Olson, and Ivan Reitman gave the studio an ultimatum. It's him or Chase. They picked Chevy, and the horror movie director John Carpenter was brought on as his replacement.
That's precisely, you hit exactly what happened. The studio wanted National Lampoon Vacation, Invisible Vacation. Chevy wanted to move someplace else, and he did a couple of really good scenes, and he really pulled them off. He's a guy who's come from television, he's a comedian, and he needed a lot of support, and he needed a lot of boosting and saying, you can do it. And I believed in it. And I believed that he could do a movie in which he balances, we can have some humor in it, but let's go ahead and play the dark side because it's a darker film. And I'm afraid when it came out, again, you're a prisoner. When you make a movie, you're a prisoner of whatever is around you at the moment you're released, whatever is happening in the society, whatever is happening in the world, and what other movies are released. Wayne's World comes out a week before us. And now we're coming out in Memoirs of an Invisible Man, Chevy Chase. The audience says, okay, comedy. Because it wasn't. It wasn't Invisible Vacation. It was a more serious film.
Chase and Carpenter agreed on tone, but clashed on set. Carpenter later saying that Chase was one of the most difficult actors he'd ever worked with.
So what about you? Who have you worked with? Who? Now, come on, it's only fair.
Chevy Chase was
really.
I wanted to quit the business after working with him. He was a producer on this thing, and he wanted to be a serious actor.
That's a mistake.
Now, big time mistake.
So you're directing, and he's got this attitude.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
Was it one of those things where they had to shut things down?
No, it never got that way. I took it all in. I just internalized it. But that was my worst. Worst.
Were this movie made in the present day, a lot of these effects would be done in a computer with little in the way of discomfort for anyone involved. But back in 1991, when this was being shot, it involved some arduous and painful makeup. the discomfort from which at times was so great that Chevy Chase would remove it, even if they were in the middle of a take, thus ruining what had been filmed.
Yeah, nobody worried about my eyes. These are scleral lenses. They cover the entire eye. They feel like ashtrays. You have to have them black and blue.
And open up for me.
It's good.
For the most part, the special effects have aged rather well. I think because, like Jurassic Park, they're there for story reasons rather than spectacle. It's easier to buy into them. The run through the rain remains impressive to this day.
I don't think they really tried with this picture. In fact, I didn't think there were very many funny moments at all. And another thing is, if he's invisible, why can't you always see his clothing? Sometimes his clothing, I think, he's totally invisible. They make lots of logical errors on that. They should have figured that out. And I think you're absolutely right. Why not I expect, especially if Chevy Chase is going to be in this picture, I figure, all right, he's going to really get into the psychology of what it's like to be invisible and dig deeper into that. Make it more of an internal story.
And that's not what happens.
No, it's just a stump plot.
The key to humor in a movie like this is to apply absolute rigid logic to an absurd situation. For example, how about the fillings in his teeth? How about his contact lenses? How about if he has dirt underneath his fingernails? What's invisible and what isn't? And you could have a lot of fun by really getting nitpicky about stuff like that.
Well, even Honey, I Shrunk the Kids did a better job of following the consequences of its characters in an improbable situation. This film really isn't much of an attempt at all.
A lot of the criticism this movie gets is absurd. Gene Siskel seems to be unable to understand why you can sometimes see Chevy Chase's character's clothes and sometimes we can't. It's quite simple. The suit he wore when he turned invisible is also invisible. Other clothes are not. When he's fully dressed and unseen, he is wearing that suit. And to answer Roger Ebert's question, his tooth fillings were changed invisible at the same time his suit, his body, and most of the building was changed. And any dirt he gets on his body would be visible, as you should know if you've seen the film, as it is key to the climax of the movie. Yes, the notion of being invisible doesn't stand up to close scrutiny, but nor does time travel.
Well, this movie I thought was interesting for you because...
Am I supposed to be looking at you? I can't tell from the setup.
Yeah, it's
whether I'll be looking at you.
We're trying to work on this.
Toward down.
Well, actually,
most of this
over that way.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
I thought this last film was great, and it was more like foul play, where you got back to acting instead of just doing Chevy. Sometimes your movies are, it's funny when you do Chevy, but you were definitely playing a character in this one. Is that what you'd like to do in the future?
It was more like that. And in fact, the first time I see Goldie in foul play, I made a move that once I had filmed Memoirs, I realized was the same exact move I made when I saw Goldie. I was throwing a peanut into my mouth, chewing, and I saw her and stopped. And in this one, I look at Daryl, I'm throwing a peanut in my mouth, I see her and I stop, and it's 10 years later.
Same peanut?
The same peanut.
The biggest problem is people were not ready to accept Chevy Chase doing a largely dramatic role. There are laughs in there, but it's not a comedy, despite how it was advertised, leading the audience to expect something it was not. Had this been made with a young Mel Gibson in the lead, the reaction would have been totally different. Which is a real shame, as Chevy Chase gives a really great performance. The only time he was allowed to flex his dramatic acting muscles after this was a guest star role on Law & Order, where he basically played Mel Gibson.
You blew a .13. You've been placed under arrest for DWI.
Screw you, sugar tits! I have powerful friends who will crucify you and your people for even putting your hands on me. Can you hear that behind the mirror?
This is not a show I watch regularly, but he was really good in this episode, and it's a real shame that he didn't get a chance to make more drama. There's so much bad said about Chevy Chase, it's almost like a bandwagon one has to get on when talking about him. Scroll through YouTube and you'll see a myriad of videos talking about what an arsehole he can be. Yes, fighting is unacceptable, but these stories only come from one direction. I'd like to know how much Chase was goaded into these altercations. His famous fight with Bill Murray backstage at Saturday Night Live seems largely the fault of a jealous John Belushi egging it on.
You turned your back
I
on
think,
them.
honestly, if you were to ask anybody who's left,
right.
I mean, John and Gilda, God rest their souls, but, and they would say the same. I think if you talk to Jane or Lorraine or whoever's, Dan, they'd tell you that year, that first year that I was there, was extremely close, friendly. I was never a hard guy to work with or anything like that. I never took myself seriously when it came to me getting more famous. It's later on that stuff gets into you, and you keep thinking, I have the perspective. I'm old enough to know not to be a different person.
Right.
But you may not notice that you're a little bit more self-aggrandizing or whatever.
Right.
These things are seen by people like John or whatever as something else. I don't know.
Howard Stern seems to have set aside his differences with Chevy Chase now, but he used to wind him up to the point of harassment.
All right, here we go. Should we call Chevy at home?
Yeah.
Came back. Let me hear that. Hi, this is the Howard Stern radio show calling, and I want to talk to Chevy on the air. Richard Belzer's here. We need to talk to him. Can you just get him? And ask him if he'll come on the air with us?
Which radio?
Howard Stern. For Chevy. If Chevy could come to the phone. Tell him we're on the phone. We want to speak to him on the air. Chevy.
Who is this?
It's Howard. It's Howard and Belzer. We're live on the air. Hey, Chev.
Howard and who?
Belzer. Richard.
Howard Belzer?
And Richard Stern. Howard Stern and Belzer. We're doing our radio show. Trying to talk to you. What are you bad-mouthing me for? Howard Stern and Richard Belzer. We're on the radio.
What? Whose radio? Whose radio is on?
Yours. Why you?
Radio on?
Larry King told me to call. Why you bad-mouthing me?
Will you turn it down a little, please? I can't hear you.
So what's going on? Why you bad-mouthing me?
Hello?
Who's this?
I got it, Janie.
Janie, we got it.
Listen, he's not bad-mouthing you.
Hey,
This
Janie,
is early in the morning.
Janie, get off the phone, please. Get off the phone. I want to deal with this.
All right.
Hang up the phone.
Well, but,
Janie,
someone
please
should
hang
call
up
you.
the phone, will you please? We are on the radio.
Why is he being a jerk?
Wait a second, Janie. We're on the radio. I'm trying.
Yeah, I understand that.
What?
But why is he saying that to you when you're a very nice person?
I don't know about you, but I'd seem like an arsehole in that situation too.
Yeah, I hate to ask you to pick a dog because it's not fair sometimes for the people who make the movies. But is there something out there that is really so bad?
Roger, he was the one who asked you if you made a movie. You go first.
I can't really recommend Three Amigos. Are you talking about Christmas pictures?
Yeah.
It's the Christmas picture I like the least.
Good on Roger Ebert for standing by his review, even though Three Amigos is a classic. But to have him on next to Chevy Chase, bad-mouthing the very movie Chevy Chase was there to promote. Yeah, I'd be pissed off with whomever booked that episode too.
This is where they do all the special effects. They did CP3O here, RD2D2D, and of course Terminator Arnold. And we're doing Memoirs of the Invisible Man. I got a lot of black makeup, a lot of blue makeup, a lot of things in my eyes. It's going to be really a great deal of fun. See you inside.
With regards to Chevy Chase's conduct on the set, yes, removing your makeup in the middle of a scene is unprofessional, but if an actor is in physical pain, I would expect them to speak up. You wouldn't expect a modern-day star like Ariana Grande to sit through it, would you? And as for butting heads with William Goldman and Ivan Reitman, that's just creative differences, which is hell to work through but often works in the movie's favour in the long run. Surrounding yourself with yes men is not good for creativity.
And I wanted to make an edgier movie. But the studio was understanding. They said, that's very nice, you did a good job, but it's not, it's not going to make it. It's not one thing or another. The audience wants to know what they're going to see. Frank Price, what did he say? Here's movie making. Tell them what they're going to see. Tell them what they're seeing. Tell them what they've seen. That's the way they think.
I, of course, have never worked with or even met Chevy Chase, but I'm willing to bet a lot of these stories have been blown out of proportion. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Either way, his personal life means very little to me. It's his finished movies that interest me, and I think Memoirs of an Invisible Man is great. In fact, I didn't realise it was a huge financial failure until I was doing research for this video, as it's always been a film I've looked back on and thought that's one of Chevy Chase's best ones. If you've not seen it, I suggest you do. Just don't go in expecting a comedy. Have you seen this film? If so, let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if you'd like to support me making this sort of content, then you can send me the price of a cup of coffee via Ko-Fi. I'm currently making a short animation for this channel, so I'll use those funds to support that. I don't really like coffee. I'm Scott Kingsnorth, and I'm making a movie.